Well, and we've got week 1 of official starting the season this week. The real season starts, and it'll be games aplenty because not only is the NFL not going, the NFL is broadcasting a ton of games on the NFL Network. So whether it's HBCU games or whatever, there is just a litany of games where you will be able to start finding them. I'm surprised they didn't have a Tuesday game this week. I really am. Remember the old ACC Tuesday night games because they couldn't get on any other day?
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because there's going to be basically, because it's Labor Day weekend, they're stretching the season the week out toward over the weekend.
Dude, so it's going to last like 5 days.
Yeah, there's games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and yes. the best game of the week is on Sunday, which is funny. So,
who's that?
That is Florida State LSU. That is a banger, absolute banger. Should be a lot of fun.
So is Florida State to be trusted?
I think they are. I mean, they finished last season strong, and they bring.
Don't they have to be? Don't they almost have to come out and play just because of the administration chirping?
Yeah, there's some extra pressure on them, but I think they'll live up to it. I mean, they finished last season with 6 straight wins. They went 10-3, their best year in a while, and they bring back basically everyone, and they added some transfers who are good too. They have a 6th-year quarterback. They have 2 receivers who are awesome. Johnny Wilson might be the best non-Marvin Harrison receiver in the country. If you don't know his name, know it. They are going to be really, really good, but so is LSU. These are 2 teams. Basically, I would expect the winner of this game to make the playoff, and the loser might too. Basically, the loser would have to run the table, but I wouldn't be surprised if both of them ended up making it when it comes out in the wash later in the season.
Well, we've obviously got games of interest to watch this weekend. Purdue is taking on the former team of Kalen DeBoer.
That's right.
The Fighting Bulldogs of Fresno State. I couldn't get it out. I was drawing a blank there for a second.
I can see your mind working there.
The hamster wheels were turning. There's too many schools out there. San Jose State, Fresno State, just who knows? Yeah, there's thousands. But Purdue's non-con schedule, while I don't even know what Fresno has right now. They probably have fallen off since Kalen left and whatnot. But after that, they play a Syracuse team, which I don't know how good they are, but they're not. It's not like they're playing an SEC non-conference schedule, I'll call it. They're not playing Troy. They're not playing Sanford, and not Stanford, but Samford. They're playing a serious non-con schedule, and they have Notre Dame coming onto the schedule. When does that start next year?
Well, they played last year. 2021 they played, and then they have a return trip to West Lafayette in a couple of years. I'm not sure exactly when. But yeah, they used to play Notre Dame every year. If you remember, they played basically every year up until 2014, and then they stopped, and they played again in 21 in South Bend. So they have a return trip to West Lafayette at some point. I can't remember exactly, but in terms of Purdue's schedule this year, I could see them going 3-0 in the non-con, and I could see them going 0-3 because we don't know what Purdue is going to be, and we also don't know what any of the teams on their non-conference are going to be. You mentioned Fresno State. Fresno State went 10-4 last year. They won the Mountain West. They started 1-4, and then
the Mountain West, who was the only hope for the Pac-12 survival.
That's right.
So literally, they could be playing the Pac-12 quasi-champion.
That's right. But Fresno State lost a lot. Their quarterback, Jake Haener, who was one of the best players in school history up there, which is saying a lot. They have a long history, but Jake Haener now plays for the New Orleans Saints. He was a 4th-round pick. So they're going to take a step back, but they still have a really good defense. And Jeff Tedford, their coach, has a history of churning out competent, good teams every year, even when they're down. So that's a question mark. And then the next week, Notre Dame plays Virginia Tech, which was terrible last year in its first season under a new coach, and seems like it might be kind of rough again this year. But is Virginia Tech, and that's never easy. And they're going to Blacksburg, which is one of the toughest places to play in college football. And then, like you mentioned, Syracuse. They host Syracuse after losing to them last year. And again, Syracuse started 6-0 last year, finished 7-6. I have no idea what they're going to be. They have a good quarterback and a good receiver in Aronde Gadsden. I could see 0-3 for Purdue, and I could see 3-0. And I think we're going to learn a lot in these first 3 weeks, even before we get to conference play.
Yeah, Purdue. People probably didn't think this last year. I wasn't thinking about it. Of course, that was not my first coverage spot, but they're not coming into the season in great shape, not horrible shape, but not the shape that they'd like to be, because coaching change, anytime you have a coaching change, it's a lot of change. That means you've also got a lot of player personnel change, and they didn't just lose a great coaching staff that had been there for 5-6 years. They also lost their best quarterbacks. They lost their best prospect. Their former best quarterback is at Louisville right now. So I don't even know. And it's going to be a change in offense. They are still a very offensively minded staff, with Graham Harrell being under the kind of the Mike Leach tree of sorts. We've talked about that. Not completely an air raid type of deal, but Jeff Brahms was not an air raid deal, although he loved to throw the ball, being a former quarterback, and his brother was on staff. Ironically, earlier I spoke about the top 10 paid people in the state were from either IU or public universities, were from IU or Purdue. Jeff Brom was number 1. Brian Brom was up in there.
Yeah. They made sure, because Brian Brom obviously is a former quarterback himself, a
12-year NFL quarterback, man.
Oh yeah, and so he would have opportunities. They wanted to keep him around, but no, Purdue they lost a lot. They lost obviously a ton from last year's team. Aiden O'Connell's gone. Charlie Jones is gone. Payne Durham is gone. They were going to have all 5 of their offensive linemen from last year back. 4 of whom had one honorable mention All Big Ten, but they lost 2 of those to the transfer portal in the offseason. So that was tough. They brought in Hudson Card to play quarterback, the former Texas quarterback. I think he's really good, and they seem to be really excited about him. Whenever he was in the game at Texas, he always looked more than competent. The only reason he left Texas was because obviously you have 2 number 1 recruits in the same quarterback room, so he was probably not going to play very often. So he came up to Purdue. They are excited about him. The problem for Purdue is that they suffered some pretty significant attrition during the preseason. They lost who they hoped would be one of their best wide receivers to an ACL tear. That was the Florida Atlantic transfer, Jamal Adreen. They lost Jamari Brown, their starting corner, at a position they were already thin. He transferred a week before the season to Mississippi State. That I don't know about that. He's a grad transfer, so he's allowed to do that. And I guess if that's where you want to be, that's where you want to be. But weird situation there. And then they're going into this season, their center, who's their best offensive lineman, or one of their best offensive linemen, because they have several good ones, is Gus Hartwig. He was All Big Ten last year. He tore his ACL against Northwestern at the end of last season. He is not going to be ready for the start of the year. So that's a huge blow for them. They were hoping to have him kind of anchoring things up front, and he will not be. So they suffered some pretty significant attrition during fall camp, and they're not quite in the position I think they thought they would be when the season began. And so it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road, I think, at the start for Ryan Walters, because it's not only the offense that's new, it's the defense, which is obviously Ryan Walters' calling card. That's why they hired him, was this new defensive structure that he brought that made Illinois last year one of the best defenses in the entire country, right? That's huge. That doesn't happen. And so he brought that to Purdue, and he during the offseason really tried to change over the defense and make it into his own image. And that's going to take some time, I think. I don't think it's going to be a quick immediately dominant defense. I think it's going to take some time to gel, because that defense, it's a lot of one-on-one matchups, and there's a lot of things that go into it, and I think it's going to take some time.